I like Baz Luhrmann. That doesn't mean I like everything he does, but I like his go for broke approach.
Mm-hmm.
I admire it.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean I like it necessarily, but so I was open to Great Gatsby. I'm not. I read the novel as a teenager and have very little remembrance about it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that colors my perception of the film, but I have seen the other. I have seen the Redford version too. Do you think that, first of all, a lot has been written that this is just one of those unfilmable books? Do you think that there's merit to that?
I don't think it's unfilmable. I just don't think people know what to do with it. I don't think people know how to really tell it. And I actually have one big problem with this new one. It isn't Baz Luhrmann going go for broke. He almost seems restrained for the first time in his career.
I completely agree.
Now, let me ask you guys this question, and I'll shut up. Just because I want to hear desperately wanted to hear what both of you think of this. But I felt the 3D was jarring, actually in the way, if that makes sense.
Well, I actually saw it in 3D, and I agree with that as well. Why would this movie really need 3D? Really, I mean, it was already busy enough as it was. So,
right.
Just in flat, and I immediately regretted my decision of going to see it in 3D.
Wait, I didn't look at that part, but
I mean, yeah, I think you're completely correct in saying that he's reined in by the material. He's a little too fascinated with the words, really,
mm-hmm.
and they overtake a lot of the scenes in the film, and then just the whole ridiculous kind of opening in the asylum where he's writing The Great Gatsby,
right.
which I thought was silly. But, I mean, I took kind of a perverse joy in the film just from the art direction and the
mm-hmm.
and the cinematography and the effects and not so much the music. I thought the music was really, really I mean, I loved Moulin Rouge for its use of non-period music.
Right.
Because I thought that was supposed to be like a sort of a modern opera kind of, and or a popular opera as they call it, where they take. There's been a lot of popular operas that have been, or popular musicals that have taken music of the day,
right.
And put it in, weird context. But here, I didn't think the soundtrack worked at all. I thought that it would have been a much more effective movie if they would have found a way to use period music, or even use period music and goose it up a little bit, But for me, it was just interesting to look at as like kind of a beautiful mess, sort of. But that's what we were all kind of expecting, and now I'm starting to look at Baz Luhrmann's career as just being Moulin Rouge, just this sort of like jackpot kind of lucky stroke, and a lot of people don't like the film, but I do, and then the rest of them tend to not work for me.
But they do go for broke, though, regardless. Even I like Australia, and I know a lot of people don't, but even that one is so crazy out there, the choices and everything. And here, I do think there's one great sequence, and that's when Gatsby reveals himself to while Rhapsody in Blue is playing. I thought that sequence was perfect, and the film never comes back to that.
Using the music,
mm-hmm.
That was refreshing because they were actually using the period music. So it was like, so I agree that was a really good thing. That showed you what the movie could have been had different choices been made, or whatever. But I think we kind of got the movie that we were kind of expecting in some ways.
In some ways, yeah.
I mean, we were hoping against hope that it was going to be brilliant, but.
I thought that I don't know. Maybe it's been unsuccessful in terms of drama in each of the film versions, because I thought, I was watching it and I said, look, I'm not very involved in these characters or the story. I could really care less. And yet I kind of love this movie because I did watch it in 3D and I thought it was an amazing visual spectacle. And I loved all the stimuli in it. And there were moments when it played like some kind of delirious dream, those visuals. And I do think that he is a real artist because he absolutely creates this very unique world. People say that there have been a couple of critics that say he's as shamelessly over the top as a Michael Bay. But I think that the difference is that Baz Luhrmann, it comes from an artist's vision. I mean, there's a very specific world being created here that is totally unique to him.
But you hit on something. You hit on something key to what I think for me the major problem in the film is the characters are just not that involved. You're just not that involved in there.
And I think that's why it doesn't work on film.
Yeah.
Because these characters are hollow, and there's a kind of a cold fish aspect to Daisy.
Oh, totally.
And there's a hollowness to the Gatsby character, and yet another terribly googly-eyed character for Tobey Macguire. When is he going to stop playing the guy, with the eyes wide, the major innocent, looking all over the place like he's in Candyland or something?
Never, because he looks like he's 17 years old and he's like 35 now. He's always going to.
And what's up with the accent? What's up? I do like DiCaprio. I like DiCaprio because he tries in roles that are beyond his talents to fully accomplish. I admire him, but why? What is up with the accent? Why the J. Edgar accent again?
Yeah, I noticed that too. Carey Mulligan, and I'm thinking, is it? Maybe it's not the actors at all. It is the characters themselves. Maybe there's just no way. This is who you're pining over. You're having these parties all this time, hoping that this woman walks over. Why she couldn't just get on a goddamn boat and cross the lake is beyond me. But no. But in all seriousness, though, I just didn't get from his perspective. I did not see why you're pining over her. She is, as you said, just so uninvolved.
There's no chemistry.
None. There's none.
And there wasn't really chemistry between Redford and Mia Farrow, and part of that is because Redford acts in front of a mirror. I mean, he kind of loves himself too much to. Yeah.
That's evident in everything we've seen. You're right.
But I think that it might be one of those books that are too internal.
That's a good point.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
That's a great point, Jamie.
The book is really just this, and I just recently read it. The book is really just caught in Nick's mind, and Nick really doesn't know what's going on, and he kind of acts as kind of a detective throughout the entire film, or throughout the entire story, whether it's a film or a book. He kind of acts as a detective trying to figure out the dynamics of all the relationships that are in it, and so if you're going to follow that as Luhrmann does to its natural conclusion on film, then you're going to get characters that seem like a mystery in many ways. Their motivations and are going to feel like mysterious.
Right.
And that doesn't really. It's kind of a mystery with no real resolve. So it's like, well, okay.
And there is something about the themes of the movie. I mean, the themes of the story. The story is notable. I think it was written in something like 25, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so it kind of predicted the end of an era while that era was still going on.
Right.
So is it important to, when you update a book or when you do a new version of a book, is it important to find a relevance to today?
Well,
I don't think
it's a good
always
point.
important.
I don't think you have to. I mean, that's a very popular thing with historians and writing, in history books and everything, is trying to, how is this relevant to today? That's a big thing. Actually, Jen Chaney, in her review on Esquire.com, she had suggested maybe the thing to do would be to modernize it, to set it against the financial crisis of 2008 was one of the things that she was talking about. And she had also thought it was the least Baz movie he's ever made. There was something about that. But there has been this talk about modernizing it, or at least updating it. I don't think you have to do that. And there's a whole school of thought that says you shouldn't do that. But
there is something, too, that the reason why Baz Luhrmann could be the perfect director for Great Gatsby, even though I don't think it's totally realized in this version, but in theory he could be, because the story kind of reflects a lot of people's complaints about Baz Luhrmann, which is style over substance.
Right.
And in many ways, that's what these characters' lives are about.
Right.
Well, I think that's something that attracted him to the subject matter entirely. A modernized Great Gatsby would not be the movie that Baz Luhrmann would want to make.
No, I don't think so either.
That's out there for somebody else to do. But yeah, I agree. That's something that he definitely acted as.
But they are shallow.
For him.
They are shallow characters. That's something that really comes out this time. And I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking, okay, well, what if we made this movie in the early 90s? Because I was thinking of maybe there's a chemistry problem here, and I was thinking, all right, we'll get Johnny Depp to be Gatsby, we'll get River Phoenix to be Caraway, we get Winona Ryder to be Daisy, and Gary Oldman to be Daisy's husband.
That's a good pairing. But the one person that I did think came through really nicely was Joel Edgerton.
I agree 100%.
Best performance in the film. Underused in it, too, I thought.
He had some fire to him.
He did.
There's also something very interesting about it in that, I mean, the movie is on fire. It's very, like, it has ants in its pants.
Yes.
Throughout the first hour and a half, and then it completely slows down.
Yeah.
Which is so odd, because that's the part of a movie where usually you start to gain momentum at your climax.
Mm-hmm.
But the last half hour of this movie is shot like a very common kind of melodrama.
Yeah. You're
with
so
no
right.
thrills,
That's a good.
Yeah.
They're all good points. All very true.
I was thankful for the break, frankly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is like that, which is weird.
I just think it was missed opportunities for. It should. It's really interesting. I would. This is one of the two big movies that was supposed to come out at the end of last year, and we have World War Z coming out in June, and it's just interesting. This is the one movie when you first read about it, you're like, oh, this is perfect. I mean, this is going to be out of this world, incredible. And you're watching it, and you're just like, he actually feels. I do feel he feels restrained almost. It's like I've never seen that in any other of his movies, and it's just so odd. I mean, I couldn't get over that.
Well, if you look at it, it's his first movie that's actually. Well, I guess not. I mean, there was Romeo and Juliet, but it's his first movie that's adapted from a novel. Let's say that, and it just feels like he buckled under the pressure of trying to create the perfect film, the perfect homage to that novel,
right?
And I just feel like he just overreached completely.
That's all right, though. That's okay.
It's an interesting failure, at least.
I don't know if it's a failure. I don't know if I would call it a failure. It's half-cocked, I guess is the word I'm looking for. I mean,
okay, all right. Well, it's an interesting non-success.
Yeah.
Let's say that.
An interesting non-success. That's good.
It could have. It's like really interesting because it's what it could have been, and I guess this is where we get in trouble. We bring our own baggage to all these things, but I do think it may be unfilmable. I really think that it may just be one of those things that's not meant to be made into a movie.
Well, some people have good words to say about the 1949 version, which is unavailable to see in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. Some people say that that's the best one, but and I would like to see that one.
Didn't SCTV do one? I'm not joking. This was John Candy as Gatsby.
Well, there's an experimental version called Gads, which I think was a stage play where a bunch of characters just are reading the play.
No, that was sold out. That was sold out when they did it a couple of years ago. Every night was sold out. On New York.
I remember that. I remember reading things about that. By the way, we should mention that the MVP of the movie is Catherine Martin, who did the production design and the costumes, as she has done for Luhrman's last two movies, and and of course she won Oscars for both for Moulin Rouge. So, and she does an amazing. I mean, that's the reason to go see the movie. If you ask me.
Yeah, I just thought it was remarkable to look at. Yeah. I mean, I hear you guys talking about how it's muted Baz Luhrmann, but I thought that Australia was the muted Baz Luhrmann because he was so desperate to work in the 1950s epic, the CinemaScope.
He wanted to make his Gone with the Wind. He wanted to make the Australian Gone with the Wind, and he overreaches. And he fucks up, but I think he's just on fire in that film, and it doesn't always make sense. I mean, it's really interesting. I think, going back to where Gatsby is introduced, that all I could think of was that first time we see Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind at the bottom of the staircase. It reminded me of that. He tried to go for that in Australia with Hugh Jackman. He couldn't quite pull it off, but I thought he pulled it off better here. I do think Gatsby's entrance is something that will be remembered. I mean, even if I don't think the movie works as a whole, I do think he's definitely going for that Rhett Butler kind of entrance, which is an awesome entrance in a film.